Hello, and thank you for joining me for another installment of There You Go with Bryan. While it's been almost 90 years since Amelia Earhart disappeared over the vast Pacific Ocean while trying to set a new world record in aviation, the life story of this brave and adventurous young lady from Atchison, Kansas, still inspires and is still shrouded in mystery. She grew up a tomboy in the middle of an America that was just coming into its own in the early 20th century. She enjoyed all the things that little girls enjoyed, but also found herself drawn to more exciting endeavors such as rock climbing, fishing, baseball, and generally looking for new adventures. When she was just 6 years old, the newspapers were abuzz with the news of a new invention created by a couple of brothers known as the Wrights in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. It was a flying carriage they dubbed the aeroplane. Oh, how that invention would affect young Amelia. Her family would move to Des Moines, Iowa. It was there in 1908 at the World's Fair that young Amelia had a chance to see a real airplane up close and personal. And then it was on to Chicago. It was after graduating from high school at 19 years old. Amelia set out to visit her sister who was going to college in Toronto. While sightseeing around town, Amelia saw firsthand many wounded veterans of the First World War. They were missing arms and legs. They were blind and paralyzed. She was so moved that she decided to sign up to be a nurse's assistant so she could help care for these men. For 12 months, she worked 10 hours a day at the Spadina Military Hospital. She mopped floors, worked in the kitchen and pharmacy, as well as took care of many of the wounded veterans. Amelia became friends with some of the young men in the Royal Flying Corps who were recuperating in the hospital. They would tell her stories of how exciting flying was, and after a while, Amelia caught the bug. Not just the flying bug, though. She contracted the Spanish flu that was tearing through the city. She eventually ended up with pneumonia and even required surgery on her sinuses. It took a year for Amelia to recover. In those 12 months, she found respite from the boredom of lying in bed by reading magazines about aviation. She decided if she would ever get back on her feet again, she was going to learn how to fly. She eventually moved to California. She started working odd jobs to make money so she could take flying lessons. She was a photographer, a stenographer, and even a truck driver. After 6 months, she saved enough to start taking flying lessons with a local flying instructor named Netta Snook. Amelia had her first flying lesson on January 3, 1921, at Kinner Field in Long Beach, California. Not only did she enjoy flying, she found that her personality was perfectly suited for the new sport called aviation. She was cool under pressure and had always had a very logical mind that allowed her to get the job done. Twice a week, she would take the bus to the end of the line and then walk the remaining 4 miles to get to the airfield. After her first solo landing, she celebrated by buying herself a brand new leather flying jacket. The jacket was so clean and crisp that the other pilots would tease her until she finally started to sleep in the jacket to get it to break in. She even rubbed airplane grease on it to make it look more distressed. Next, she cut her hair short, as was the fashion of other lady pilots at the time. She saved more money and bought a second-hand chromium yellow Kenner Airster biplane, which she nicknamed the Canary. On October 22, 1922, Earhart flew her airplane to the height of 14,000 feet, a new world record for female pilots. And on May 16th, Amelia Earhart became the 16th woman in America to be issued a pilot's license. At this point, Amelia loved flying, but she still had to make a living. Money was tight, and it was only going to get tighter. By 1924, she was forced to sell her airplane for a more practical vehicle, a 1922 yellow Kissel Gold Bug Speedster two-seater automobile, which she named the Yellow Peril. Amelia and her mother decided to drive across country to Boston. You see, Amelia's sinuses were acting up again, and she was told she would need another operation. The two ladies set out on their cross-country adventure. After healing up from her surgery, they decided to stay in Boston for a while. She tried to be practical. Amelia opened a photography studio and eventually became a social worker. All the while, she was never quite able to get the flying bug out of her system. It just so happened that the Earharts lived in Medford, Massachusetts, not far from the local chapter of the American Aeronautical Society. She went to a meeting, joined, and was eventually elected its vice president. She got a new job as a sales rep for Dinner Aircraft in Boston and even started writing local newspaper columns about flying. She also started an organization to support women aviators. The years passed, and Earhart continued to study and gained experience that she needed to become a better pilot. Amelia later confided in a close friend that nothing brought her more happiness than being up in the air. To soar through the clouds and leave the worries of everyday life down there on the ground was what made her feel the most fulfilled. But as always, money was an ever-present concern. Flying was expensive. She would have to come up with a plan if she was to ever get her wings. Years later, several of her closest friends and relations would state that Amelia felt that flying was her destiny. She also believed where there was a will, there was a way. Now all she had to do was find it. Thank you so much for joining us for another installment of There You Go with Bryan. If you like this program and would like to support it, please click the Venmo or Patreon link below. As always, we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time on There You Go with Bryan.